thank both of these gentlemen for coming on here, as they have come up with a truly interesting topic. So thanks again, guys, for being here.
Thank you, Tom.
I will never debate this guy again who slanders me during the debate. I will never talk to you again, you fucking piece of shit. Goodbye.
What I think that some people, maybe even you, I guess we'll find out, are doing is you're trying to make this seem like an epidemic that is statistically way more prevalent than the statistics actually show, in order to drum up fear surrounding Muslims in general, and in order to push a narrative that is anti-immigration and anti-Islam.
So in order to kind of like see if you're logically consistent in the application of your principles, I thought we could take another issue that is racialized and compare the statistics of that to this and that. So that issue would be police brutality in America. This is the main statistic. This is like the biggest one, the most compelling one.
I would use a much broader consortment of data to support this.
Right, but if you had to narrow it down to one statistic, this is probably the one. So, for example, we say African Americans are X times more likely to be brutalized by the police. That's the statistic that I need. Then we can compare that to the likelihood of
Why would you compare those two things? You understand that two things can be true. A group can be overrepresented in a crime statistic, and there can still be racial bias in prosecuting them, or racial bias in how they're perceived in the media. Those two things can be true at the same time.
If black people are X times more likely to be brutalized by the police, and if Asians are equally or greater X times more likely to be members of grooming gangs, then the racialization of the issue is justified.
All right, I can help you here. Okay, the comparison here is, for Black Lives Matter, black people are overrepresented in a lot of crime statistics, and there's a racial bias against black people in the U.S. justice system. Those two things are true at the same time. The comparison to grooming gangs here is Asians are overrepresented in the type 1 group-based child sexual exploitation statistics, and this is an issue that places an undue, unfair, illogical burden on Muslims and people of Pakistani descent in order to answer for those crimes. Both of those things can be true at the same time.
Right, but you're dodging the core issue, which is that if you apply the same metric, if you use that as a baseline and say, does this match or exceed the baseline, which it does, then it must be justified to talk about this and include the racial or cultural aspects of that as part of the discussion.
Talking about the like race and crime and ethnicity and the makeup of offenders and victims, all that stuff is fine. Real academics do it all the time, and they don't get yelled at for being racist. Pushed by a media that wants to drum up fear around brown people. I'm going to give you a really good example of this. I know for a fact that you've seen this article. Grooming epidemic has almost 19,000 children identified as sexual exploitation victims in England. How many of these 19,000 children who are identified as at risk of sexual exploitation, how many of those do you think were the result of Muslim grooming gangs?
I don't know. You tell me.
No, I want you to tell me. Like you're saying that grooming is an epidemic. That grooming gangs are an epidemic. How many do you think there are? What percentage of this 19,000 do you think is part of Muslim grooming gangs?
You tell me, man. I don't know.
I don't know either. The statistics don't tell us that. So where are we getting this notion that Muslim grooming gangs are an epidemic? This is a positive claim that you're making. I want you to back it up with any sort of data whatsoever.
So Sarah Champion is a Labour MP. I think you're going to agree that the Labour Party is not a far-right extremist organization.
I never claimed anybody was.
Okay. Sarah Champion is on record saying that she thinks there could be 1 million victims of grooming gangs.
1 million victims of grooming gangs. She can think that, and she could be wrong. Let's get some data to support it.
That independent article was one of my data points.
Okay, you're comfortable calling it an epidemic. What are the numbers then?
I would say from my research, the numbers would be in the hundreds of thousands. Well, tens of thousands of victims.
Nope.
That's
not even a little bit. Not even a little bit.
What do you mean?
Of grooming gangs? Not even a little bit. Like, where the hell are you getting tens of thousands of victims from?
So Sarah Champion said 1 million. I mean, I have to admit.
Okay, so your data source is like one lady says a thing. That's your data?
No. So the independent article that said 19,000 was one of the things that I was going to use. You've said that it's wrong, but you haven't actually given me the report.
What were you going to use that independent article to say? What do you think that means?
That there was 19,000 grooming victims in 2018. That's what the article says.
You kind of demonstrated that you were a little confused on those terms. Do you think grooming and grooming gang are the same thing?
Not necessarily, no.
So do you think that it's significant? Like let's say more than half of those 19,000 children identified as at risk for child sexual exploitation, do you think the majority of those were victims of Muslim grooming gangs? Wouldn't the article say that if it was true?
It depends if they have the data or not, right? It depends what's actually in that report. They just say that they were groomed.
You've claimed that tens of thousands of kids have been the victims of Muslim grooming gangs with no evidence whatsoever to back it up. None.
Don't care.
You've made a claim without evidence.
It's happening a lot everywhere.
It's happening a lot everywhere.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is an astounding feat of intellectual capacity. It's happening a lot everywhere.
Thank you.
I do have a study that says that stories of like white girls being molested or sexually exploited by white offenders don't get media coverage in the same way that that a white girl getting exploited by a brown victim does. That study is called, I'll bring it up for you.
Don't really care. The epidemic comes from the Independent article.
The Independent article, which does not mention Muslim grooming gangs. They do not say that they are the source of this 19,000 number. And again, the topic is on Muslim grooming gangs. This Independent article, which is deliberately misleading, I don't blame you for getting misled by it, does not speak anywhere to Muslim grooming gangs or how prevalent they are or what percentage of this 19,000 number that they make up.
If we just take the Rotherham as an average, that would be about 1,000 victims per year for 15 years. So that'd be 15,000 victims. So that's a very conservative estimate.
And ridiculous extrapolation that you got from that. Wow.
Yeah, well, we have Sarah Champion. The
you keep bringing her up who says that there's 1 million. That's not data, dude. That's not a reasonable way to form opinions. There were about 45 grooming gang convictions in the year 2016. I think that was the year the Rotherham 8 went to jail. So the Rotherham case, 2016, about 45 grooming gang convictions happened that year, according to data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Ministry of Justice.
Epidemic.
45. It's less than 1%. Hold on. It's less than. Hold on.
That's 10%
of what?
That's 10%.
10% of child sexual exploitation convictions. You're right, and less than 1% of child sexual. Hold on, no. And less than 1% of. Hold on, I'm not done. It's less than 1% of child sexual abuse. There's a 99% there that is not these Muslim grooming gangs. Are all of those epidemics?
Yes, there's epidemic of pedophilia everywhere in the world, and it's disgusting.
Cool. Yeah, that's really, really horrible. Yeah, but if everything's an epidemic, is anything an epidemic?
When you talk about like all the child sexual exploitation, you're including like people looking at images on the internet and shit, which those people belong in jail too. But you can't compare people like hundreds of 12-year-old girls you can't compare all child sexual exploitation. I really agree with you. Why would you use the 19,000 number then? If all child sexual exploitation isn't the same, why were you going to use it as a data point to support the notion of Muslim grooming gangs? Do you think that far-right organizations used these grooming gang stories to push anti-Islamic propaganda? Yes or no? The EDL is not a far-right organization.
I think that, okay, I guess that tells us all we need to know.
The people at the EDL and Tommy Robinson have prevented more rapes and more abuse of children than you,
Tommy Robinson, almost
could ever hope to prevent in your life. And that's a fact.
That's a fact right there. That is hilariously, inexcusably wrong. Are either of us in a position to prevent child sexual exploitation?
I mean, I talk about it, right? Like I make videos about it and stuff like that. But
You're a true
I'm not
hero.
saying that-
One of the reports on the Rotherham case of the Rotherham Police Department that you cited as evidence that this police department was ignoring like all these victims of grooming gangs because of like being fear of called racist. This is a direct quote from that report. Okay, the background threat of the BNP or EDL exploiting the problems in Rotherham for their own divisive ends may have been a rationale for not talking about the race issue openly. The EDL makes things worse. They make it harder for police officers and police departments to investigate these issues because they do want to exploit any sort of crime with a brown person as the perpetrator for their own divisive ends. They absolutely do that. Tommy Robinson, your hero, almost got a conviction overturned, almost ruined and caused a mistrial of one of the victims that he was supposed to care about because he could not stop yelling and chanting and doing his little Facebook Live segment in front of the trial.
Yeah, because he was reporting on the trial.
He wasn't reporting on the trial. He's not a reporter. I mean, you have kind of lied in this debate. You said that there's tens of thousands and you haven't been able to prove it. I know for a fact that isn't true.
So again, I didn't think that was really that I had to prove that there was tens of thousands.
You don't
of
think
victims
that you saying that there's an epidemic of Muslim grooming gang victims and it's in the number of tens of thousands, you don't think that's relevant to our debate?
This is your big gotcha that I can't prove that there's tens of thousands of victims. The statistic that justifies the reaction is the fact that Asians are overrepresented as the people who commit this crime. No, it's also based off of looking at the convictions in other boroughs.
In the convictions, I told you what the convictions were. It was 45. 45 total convictions in the year 2016. 45 total. And right, the amount of victims that year, according to the CEOP, was I think 117. Now, this is not complete data, but I'm doing way more work here trying to prove your point than you are. Do you think that there's some sort of like genetic predisposition towards these crimes in this population, in this racial population?
There's definitely cultural elements to it.
Do you think there's racial, like genetic?
The only thing I'll say about genetics is that the average IQ of Pakistan is 84.
This is why I think people call you a neo-Nazi. You think that like racial differences, genetic differences in IQ can explain different behaviors in different population groups. That's something you kind of just said.
Yeah, they contribute, definitely.
So do you think that, for example, black people, they have lower IQs on average, and that means they're more predisposed to crime genetically?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the studies have shown that I've seen. Like, it's weird to say that they're genetically predisposed. You can word it a different way if you want. Let's word it as more at risk. How's that sound?
I guess, sure, if you want to be PC about it.
Yeah, I do.
What would you say to the people who are saying that we should get rid of Muslims in the UK because they're probably going to groom our women? What would you say to them?
I'm against the Islamification of the West.
That's not what I asked you.
I wouldn't say anything. I would ignore them. Well, what is it? I mean, yeah.
Are you a coward?
I don't like the term "get rid of," so I'll condemn that.
Okay, get rid of.
But
what would you prefer
vague,
instead?
But I don't like it.
Okay, based on your feelings, do you think it's fair to like profile a Muslim, like let's say a Muslim 20-year-old?
Exactly. Like if school teachers see Muslim men hanging around in cars outside the schools talking to the underage girls, that should be a sign of concern that they should like.
So you're in favor of racial profiling, right?
Talk to the parents.
You're in favor of racial profiling? Cool.
Yes. Okay. Also, I don't know if you saw this, but there was a report that came out today. This would be in regards to our first debate. An investigation by a federal body.
Yeah, you don't want to.
Trans bathroom enabled alleged sexual assault of kindergartner.
A what now? Say that again.
So here's the headline from the Federalist. Federal investigation. Trans bathroom enabled alleged sexual assault of kindergartner.
That's a really interesting single anecdote. What do you think that single anecdote proves? Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if I had a study? Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if I had a study on trans bathroom bills that said that whatever you're trying to extrapolate from the single instance was absolutely bunk? Wouldn't that be embarrassing for you? Should I bring that up?
I mean,
do you want to hear it? Do you want to see it?
I had the study that showed that unisex bathrooms caused more sexual crimes.
Which is not the same thing as allowing trans people in the bathrooms. You don't even know what you're looking at, buddy. So a study Gender identity non-discrimination laws in public accommodations, a review of evidence regarding safety and privacy in public restrooms, locker rooms, and changing rooms, found that this study provides evidence that fears of increased safety and privacy violations as a result of non-discrimination laws are not empirically grounded. That's a study. That's not one article published in a right-wing magazine. That's a study that looks at everything. Which one would you wait?
This is a federal investigation.
Of one instance. It does not prove a larger trend. You wouldn't make policy decisions based on one instance. That's why we need data. That's why you don't want to give it to me, because you know broad data doesn't support your arguments.
Well,
that's why you need to use anecdotes. Remember that video you made after the debate where you're like really mad, like calling your fans idiots?
I was arguing with my my audience, and then I decided to just drop it because it was just stupid. But my audience was wrong in that, and I was right, obviously.
Okay.
The final point I'll make is that it's a culture of political correctness and accusing people of racism that led to this problem, and you're just here repeating it. It's almost as if leftists don't learn from history. You want to go back to shaming anybody who talks about the racial aspects of this, and bring us right back to square one, where people who see these kinds of things happening out on the street are afraid to speak up because people like you are going to say, "Oh, you're just accusing that guy of this because he's a Muslim or whatever."
I specifically said it's okay to gather data on race.
We know that it happens.
I've said it's okay to gather data on race in crime statistics. Right. All that stuff is fine. I'm okay with using that data to better combat crime. Absolutely for it. What I'm not okay with is people saying that, oh, because this group is overrepresented in this one crime statistic, this must mean it's genetic, and this must mean we can racially profile them. I did not realize that your source for the number of the thing that we're talking about was going to be misreading an independent headline. I didn't realize that. I'm sorry. I would not have prepared to the extent that I did if I had realized that. I would have saved myself a lot of effort.
Right. So your whole point is a straw man that nobody has said, which is that these people are genetically prone to...
I asked you, and it was the longest pause ever. To the best of my ability, I have not said anything incorrect.
Because you would have watched my video on your fucking bullshit.
I did dude, 5 months ago. I don't remember what was in it. You want me to watch it right now?
You obviously don't care about being right then.
I do care about being right, actually. Very much so. I don't remember what was in the video. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that hurt your feelings. He's mad again! Let's see. You gonna say anything else? Nah. That's it. Cool.